east. Into the evening time, patchy rain pushes a little bit further westwards. This weather front's still giving some rain across parts of Northern Ireland, fringes of Wales and western Scotland too, but a lot of cloud around once more heading into the early hours of Sunday. Perhaps one or two clearer spells developing eventually. Eastern Scotland, northeast England, so turning a little chilly here, but elsewhere temperatures holding up. A frost-free start for many on Sunday. Yes, a cloudy start, but it should soon start to brighten up. We'll see more in the way of sunny spells developing as we move through the day. And for most, it will be a much drier, brighter afternoon on Sunday, and temperatures, again, not too bad, reaching towards the mid-teens. And then high pressure holds on into the beginning of next week too. Monday and Tuesday, plenty of sunny spells too.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Click that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one.
Let's respectfully disagree, that's what we like
Absolutely.
on Jubes and Kerr.
Come and join us, GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, team. It's 7 o'clock and I am Laurence Fox. Tonight, I'm addressing the Policy Exchange report highlighting the agenda of silence being wrought upon parents. Similarly, we can't talk about the obvious facts of the recent mass shooting in Tennessee, but I will not be silenced. And the extreme far-left protest in Auckland that led to an anti-trans British activist known as Posy Parker being booed, heckled, doused with tomato juice. Freedom of speech, my bottom. Then I welcome you to Fox and the Hounds panel. I'm the Fox and I have 2 news hounds with me to digest some of the biggest stories of the week, including the Great British Breakfast being under threat, there's a hole in the sun monster, and I will be making a tomato scream in terror. And finally, we will cast our eyes over the pond to catch up with the latest news from Trumpland, And don't forget, most importantly, I want to hear from you. Send me your views at gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at Loz of Fox. That's all coming up after the headlines with Aaron Armstrong.
Hi there, I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. Well, picking up on that Donald Trump story, Stormy Daniels, the adult film star at the centre of his indictment on criminal charges, is predicting violent consequences of his appearance in court. In an interview with The Times, Ms Daniels says whatever the outcome, it's going to cause violence, injuries and death. Trump has become the first US president in history to face criminal prosecution over an alleged payment to Ms Daniels to keep quiet about their relationship a week before the 2016 election. Now, she says, although she fears the reaction of Trump's supporters, this proves he's no longer untouchable, adding of their potential court showdown, there's no way he could be scarier with his clothes on. Trump denies wrongdoing, and his former Vice President Mike Pence says it's a witch hunt.
It's clear to the overwhelming majority of the American people that this is nothing short of a political prosecution being affected by a Manhattan DA who literally campaigned on bringing charges against one particular American. And I must tell you that that should be offensive to every American, left, right, and center. Every American deserves equal treatment under the law.
The Prime Minister says Britain's new trade deal will help unlock the benefits of Brexit for people across the UK. The United Kingdom has joined 11 Asia and Pacific nations in a trade pact that will boost exports by cutting tariffs on things like cars, cheese, chocolate and whiskey. It is expected to be worth £1.8 billion over 10 years, although critics say it will only boost the economy by 0.08%. The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, says we need to focus on the EU, but Chancellor Jeremy Hunt believes it's an opportunity for growth.
The significance of joining the Pacific Trade Bloc is that this is one of the fastest growing areas in the world. Around half of the world's middle-class consumers will be in this bloc of countries by the end of the decade. It's a massive opportunity for British exporters, and combined with the very attractive business taxes that we introduced in the budget, a £9 billion cut in corporation tax, that will mean that the UK economy has very big long-term growth opportunities.
Ukraine's described Wimbledon's decision to lift its ban on Russian and Belarusian tennis players this summer as immoral. They will now be able to compete at Wimbledon as neutral athletes. Ukraine's foreign minister, Dmytro Kuleba, has urged the UK, though, to deny those players visas. And Pope Francis appears to have made a rapid recovery from a bout of bronchitis that caused him to be hospitalised earlier this week. The Pope's baptised a baby and was handing out Easter eggs at his hospital in Rome. He is expected to return home tomorrow and is scheduled to take part in a Palm Sunday service to mark the start of Easter week celebrations. TV online, DAB Plus radio and on TuneIn. This is GB News. Now, back to Laurence.
Less than a week after Let Women Speak campaigner Posy Parker narrowly avoided being trampled to death in New Zealand by a violent mob of heavyset male transgender cultists, furious that their deepest desire to share intimate spaces with young women remained under dubious scrutiny, a deranged and indoctrinated girl who bought the lie being daily churned into young minds that they can defy nature and somehow change sex, shot her way into a religious school in Tennessee and murdered 6 Christians, 3 of them young children, as part of her own satanic transgender crusade. Ethnic cleansing of any other group, of any other race, religion or creed would be rightly and roundly condemned, whilst inevitably being seized upon by the power-hungry for weeks as maximum political capital was drained from this pile of innocent corpses. But these weren't just any persecuted group. These were white Christians, the very lowest of the low in the intersectional hierarchy of grievance and permissible hate. So instead of silence, instead of outrage at the slaughter of innocent children, from the American president came giggles of delight about ice cream as the young bodies became ever colder, alone on their steel trays in the morgue.
My name is Joe Biden. I'm Dr. Joe Biden's husband. And I ate Jenny's ice cream, chocolate chip. I came down because I heard there was chocolate chip ice cream. By the way, I have a whole refrigerator full upstairs. You think I'm kidding? I'm not. God. Ben, how are you, pal? One of the best guys in the United States Congress, Ben Cardin. Folks, welcome to the White House.
Puff pieces from international media saw the cowardly, probably hormone-ravaged killer's self-inflicted demise spun as some sort of noble warrior victim herself, despite her demonic cruelty. Our own Daily Mirror whimsied about the murderer's lost future as a talented artist. One wonders what we have to look forward to next in this clown world we are forced to perform in. A lengthy editorial about what a loss to the watercolour community Hitler's untimely death was, perhaps. I myself woke up in clown world this morning to a message from someone in this very building asking me to delete a tweet in which I offered a view that I would be less than happy handing over the safeguarding of my children to a body dysmorphic, mentally unwell bloke in a wig. I was being compelled to reject the evidence of my eyes and ears and refer to this man as a woman. I politely declined because, call me old-fashioned, in a world beset by deceit and lies, adding another to the pile myself didn't feel like a worthwhile contribution. The more we mock these cynical ideologues, the sooner perhaps the violent virtue signalers may crawl back underneath that rock they came out from. And then on Thursday came the policy exchange report about the imposition of gender ideology upon our children in schools, titled Asleep at the Wheel. The report is a litany of the way schools routinely overreach their ideological mittens into the sacred business of the family by socially transitioning children without parental knowledge or consent, and other equally unnatural practices. One might have thought lessons could really be learned about the damages of socially transitioning young people without consent from our pathetic, cowardly she-killer in Tennessee, who, in defiance and anger of her Christian upbringing and her parents' conviction that such things as sex are sacred and immutable, wrought her deadly and bitter revenge on innocent children. It is impossible not to see this as anything other than the thing that it is. We are in a spiritual war to protect the very underpinnings of truth itself. Society cannot function when it subjugates itself to a radical narcissistic cult hell-bent on the destruction of truth. Society cannot function when schools and the state turn children against their parents, soothing them with the snake oil sadness that a child can be born in the wrong body. Society cannot function when good men and women deny the truth for fear of the mob. Society cannot function when the mob rules. And free speech is only free when girdled by empirical truth. The reductive moral relativism of these postmodern movements, though, deny the very existence of truth itself, preferring the silky comfort of subjectivism and deceit. Any teacher or parent who panders to the gender cult instead of embracing the genuine privilege of raising children, of nurturing and supporting their kids through the harsh realities of actual real life, as opposed to this upsy-downy clown world, has let their child down in the most fundamental way. Just as any adult who, through fear of upsetting the toxically masculine trans mob, refuses to stand up for the truth, becomes an accomplice in its murder. It is possible to love your enemies, and we should. To hate the sin and not the sinner, to be wise in the knowledge that all human beings are deeply flawed and susceptible to all kinds of evil and malice. But it is also possible to recognize our mistakes and change direction. If we don't, how long will it be before a woman is stamped to death for asserting her right to exist and express an opinion, or a child, poisoned by this pernicious ideology, stalks home to reap the most chilling revenge on their loving parents? But first, over the pond, and with Trump being indicted, I'm asking you, is the Biden administration the most corrupt administration in history? Email me at gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at LozzaFox. First up tonight is someone who is no stranger to the attacks from the hardcore left or beatings from the Be Kind crew. And after seeing the scenes unfold in New Zealand and Australia for the crime of having an opinion and sticking up for women's rights, I decided to invite him on to talk more about it. Andy Ngo, author of the New York Times best-selling book Unmasked and senior editor of the Post Millennial. Andy, thank you so much for joining me. What did you make of those scenes in Auckland with Posey Parker?
Well, I think the violence is happening because attempts to silence women's rights campaigners and critics of radical trans ideology, those attempts to silence them have failed. Those who have been in the trenches as activists or have been documenting this as I have for a long time can easily point to mountains of evidence of violence and threats of violence really being, I would say, a pillar of their MO. We know from research on how radicalization happens is that there needs to be a grievance narrative. In this particular case with the radical trans militants, it's not just a narrative, it's a lie. They have a number of claims. One, they claim that they are victims of genocide. That is neither true in this country or in my country, the United States. In fact, all the data we have on people who are gender diverse identifying shows that that population group has surged, actually, very, very rapidly. In addition, we see every institution from government to media to medicine being captured by some form of this trans ideology. And although we don't know what's in the manifesto of the mass killer in Nashville, that killing at the Christian school, the killings, I should say, do come in the middle of a surge in violent rhetoric from trans militants because they are reacting to various states in the US restricting the medical transitioning of minors. And even before that, if you go to any of their direct actions in the US or in the UK, you will often see signs and statements and chants of threats of violence, of sexual violence, and I mean, the reaction from many radical trans activist groups after the shooting, which has been to mourn the deceased mass murderer.
But you're a so you know you've covered these. You're often first on the scene digitally when it comes to you know I've witnessed you really getting in there early on people's Facebook profiles, Twitter profiles, all these these manifestos. So when it's someone from the so-called far right who commits a mass shooting, the manifesto is often revealed, isn't it? Or the contents of it are revealed. Why do you think the manifesto has not been revealed this time?
It's my understanding that the FBI has been holding it up, and at least on the ground, there are a number of LGBTQ activist groups who have also urged for that to not be released. I think that's quite telling. You know,
do you think it's quite telling because of the contents of what might be in this manifesto? Because she did send a text message to her friend saying there's a lot of it, there's more than enough information in there. Do you think that the contents of that may be a direct attack on Christian people?
Well, I don't want to speculate, but you know, I understand the argument that releasing extremist manifestos may help, I don't know, promote their message more. I can understand that argument. I am of the perspective that I think it's better for the public to be informed about who commits these atrocities, what may have motivated them, what their social media footprint is, and you know, I'm just going to go over and over again back to that the core claims that the trans ideologues and activists say that they are victims of the genocide. It's not true. In the U.S., we're averaging around 30 deaths of trans people total in a population of 360 million, and of that, very, very few of that are the victims because of a hate crime. I'm talking about like 5. Now, every death is a tragedy, and I'm not minimizing it, but that's not a genocide. And
What's in it for politicians, though, for Joe Biden to tweet today, you know, you're visible to us, we love you, and also to invoke religion, you know, when it's very clearly written in the Bible, whether you're religious or not, that he made them male and female. For Joe Biden to say, God bless you for whoever you are, I mean, he's invoking God in a way which is not representative of what the Christian belief is, and B, he is, when there's 6 dead Christian people on the floor and in a morgue in Tennessee, he is giving a round of applause to trans shooters. I mean, it seems to me, to any sane human being, be it Democrat or Republican, this is a gross violation of his position of office.
Well, a lot of left-of-centre people, left-wing people in liberal media are quite sadistic. We've already had many years of, in the wake of any, for example, any jihadist attack, the response often would be to frame the perpetrators of the violence as somehow victims of Islamophobia, and that, I mean, it's victim blaming. We had years of that through IS attacks and before that. Now that it's a different group of people committing violence, you know, it's the same tactic, and it's sick. But that's what they do. So.
Do you think, in my view, I hold this sort of simple view that everyone can be evil. It doesn't matter what political persuasion you are. But it does seem, you know, from far-right people, from the Timothy McVeighs, I don't know whether he was far-right, but he certainly was, you know, that we're seeing an escalation now, a ramping up of the more this ideology is rejected, the more people are awake to what is happening. You know, we've got this report coming out this week, this policy exchange report saying, I mean, you know, it's just horrendous, some of this stuff. 72% of schools are teaching people that have gender identity may be from a different biological sex. 25% of people are teaching that some children may be born in the wrong body. This is the capture, the complete capture of the entire educational establishment by an ideology. And I think possibly, do you think the more it's coming into vision to people and the curtain is being drawn back, the more we challenge it, the more violent they become, and what can we expect moving forward?
Well, the trans militants have certainly been threatening more violence if their demands aren't met. You can see it in their signs in their shirts, such as trans rights or else, and then there are pictures of firearms and rifles. So certainly on the other side, they actually have a promise of more violence, the more that we push back.
What does America, what does the UK, what do countries that we've had Hamza Yusuf today bring abortion into debate? What are we looking at moving forward? And what would be, from your observations of chronicling these people, what would you expect us to expect, and what would you suggest we do to counteract it?
Well, what we do is we repeat the truth, which is that there is no trans genocide, and repeat various evidence about, well, there's not much evidence to support that transitioning of minors actually helps them with better outcomes. In fact, there's research to suggest some of the opposite. And just don't... Their demands are irrational and unreasonable, and we should call it out for what it is.
Speak the truth. Andy Ngo, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Andy Ngo. Right, coming up next, a new feature that I'm still not allowed to get the name changed of, The Fox and the Hounds. Thanks, Cash. It's a terrible name. And we'll be with you talking through some of the stories that caught my eye this week. I will be talking to political commentator Raheem Ibrahim and bisexual writer and podcast host Lewis Oakley. Back in 3.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
is the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you
I'll
are.
put that as my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Bonsoir, bonsoir. There's a lot of news during the week, and I'm only allowed on your telly box for a single hour of that week because I'm naughty. So I invite my news hounds into the studio to discuss some of the topics that caught my eye. Political commentator Reem Ibrahim and bisexual writer and podcast host Lewis Oakley. Welcome, team.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Right, let's kick off with the policy exchange report. Reem, you were a teacher. What do you reckon?
I think, look, it's incredibly difficult to have this conversation with parents and sort of tell them that actually your child can go home and be Sam and go to school and be Samantha, and you could have absolutely no idea that it's happening. I think that's absurd, but I do think the solution to this problem is actually letting parents have school choice. At the moment, you do not have choice at all when you send your when you send your kids to school. You aren't able to choose what kind of school you go to. Actually, I think if we introduce a policy of school choice, we marketise education, let parents and families become consumers, then actually all of this woke stuff just would not happen because parents and children have the choice for where they go.
School choice. Now, do you think that what I was alluding to earlier, which is there's certain real dangers of socially transitioning children, what we've seen in Tennessee with this young girl unable to not socially transitioned in school and then unable to share it with a family. What's it like when you're feeling like you're hiding a secret as a young person?
So I didn't catch the first part of your show because I was
Damn
getting my makeup done. But I don't have a problem with this. As someone that is LGBT, I think, first of all, there is a safeguarding issue, right? So for some kids, it is not going to be safe for them to be out to their parents. I also think, that there is an issue with...
Are they the exception or the rule?
Say it again?
Are they the exception or the rule in 2023?
What do you mean by that?
Well, I'm just saying, for some kids, of course, it's going to be dangerous going home anyway to your mum and dad. They're abusive, and that probably will be combined with homophobia and all of the others. But I'm just saying that in 2023, in a very modern, progressive society, shouldn't we be allowing the parents to listen to the kids rather than putting that to school?
Well, look, if your child has felt safer coming out to friends at school or a teacher, that is already saying that they don't want to share this with you for whatever reason. And I think it's not always something we have to take as a bad thing on the parent, right? Because as someone that came out and told everyone
but their parents. There is this thing of like, look, before I tell someone so crucial in my life as my parents, especially when you are a child and they are in charge of you, maybe I want to test the waters with a couple of people at school, test the waters with a couple of teachers.
With sexuality, when it comes to gender transitioning, when we're talking about a young child that is being sort of indoctrinated by this gender ideology, whether you believe it or not, the fact that the parents are not able to know that this is happening, I think, is incredibly harmful. And it means that actually, I mean, do you trust the teachers to really be sort of a positive reinforcements of safeguarding? I don't trust them at all.
What is your trust in schools, Lewis?
I can't speak for all teachers. There are some good ones, some bad ones. Who knows? But I do think, first of all, I don't think anyone's being indoctrinated. As someone LGBT, you can't catch it. You can't teach it.
I hate this identity politics stuff.
You can't catch it.
1 second, a minute. OK. Only 28% of secondary schools are reliably informing parents as soon as the child discloses feelings of gender distress, right? 33% of secondary schools said they would inform a designated safeguarding lead or medical practitioner when a child discloses gender distress. The one that gets me, 72% of schools are teaching people that have a gender identity that may be different from their biological sex. That is indoctrination. There is no way you can tell me it's not.
What, read that again. Teaching what?
72% of schools are teaching that people who have a gender identity which may be different from their biological sex. So that's.
But that's just telling people that they exist.
No, because what?
It's not teaching them like you all have to do it.
It's turning around and saying not only do you exist, but 70% of the time you're wrong.
I can't speak to that, but
it's indoctrination, whether you like it or not. I mean, I'll take your points on everything else, but it's indoctrination.
It's indoctrination, but also I think that, again, the solution would be to actually let parents and children have that choice when it comes to education. I mean, at the moment, we've got this sort of completely sort of blanket approach to the national curriculum, which means that parents have no choice but to let their children be taught.
But what would you say to address this point, Lewis's point, which is that there are some kids who've got sort of stuck in the dark ages parents who they're too frightened to come out to, who you know, it's going to actually damage them, and they do need to trust a friend or a teacher.
Look, as somebody that grew up in an incredibly religious and conservative household, I completely relate to that, but I actually think that, you know, when it comes to sexuality, that's a completely different issue. You're not changing your gender. This is, you know, when we've got children that are being indoctrinated in this way, this then leads them down the path to medical transitioning. If they are medically transitioning without parental consent until they're at the age of 18, I think that's incredibly wrong.
But no one's talking about medical transitioning at this. This is just allowing people to change some pronouns and change their name and maybe dress a bit differently. Look, I am a parent of 3. I absolutely think that the parents should be consulted if we're talking about medical things here. You know, and I think that with everything, that's not just a trans issue. If they're going to give my kids medication or vaccines, I want to know about it, whatever it is. But I don't think that's what we're talking about here. This is just about young kids that are maybe unsure and they're exploring, and they just want to do that in the environment they've chosen to do it in, running off to the parents being like, guess what, you're never going to guess. I just don't think it's really necessary.
It's not about guess what, it is about safeguarding. It's parents informing it's sort of teachers informing parents what their children are actually doing in schools, and I think it's incredibly harmful for these parents not to be told.
Last word?
I just don't see the issue with this. I really do. I think we need to let people...
It's not happening defence. I do love the it's not happening defence. It's my favourite one. Anyway, coming up. Now we can go to more funny stuff, which I like because it's Friday. I commit to murdering. Back in 3...
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Welcome back. Oh, bad news, vegans. Plants cry when they feel pain, apparently. I'm going to play that sound in a minute, but I'm just going to do some live studio work. No, he's good. Right, this is what it sounds like when plants cry. Where is it? Play the plant crying. Oh, GB News. Right, let's get on with the discussion. Lewis, can them plants cry?
Apparently so.
Will it affect your eating of them?
No, not really. I mean, survival of the fittest and all that.
Do you eat meat?
I do.
Oh, well, that's ridiculous. Please tell me you're a vegetarian.
I am definitely not a vegetarian. I actually find it offensive. That
Kill the tomato now.
I'll kill my tomato. I quite like knives. I feel like a...
Just let me listen to it. Let me listen.
Listen to my tomato.
Oh, wait, they've got it. Sound is coming.
The sound.
I think we may have over-egged the plants in pain pudding. The egg plants in pain pudding. Is that the plants that are upset? Peter apparently have said that they're going to stop eating plants if they do actually feel pain. Kill the tomato.
I'm killing my tomato.
No, I can't hear it. I don't think they're upset. I think we need to move on from this tomato.
I like holding this knife, though.
Yeah, but it's good. But don't... Oh, no, you're on my side.
Can I just say I'm excited about this story, though, because now we're one step closer to someone creating a device that can just go into your plants and it'll just be like, your plant's crying, go water it.
Yeah, exactly.
So really, thousands of plants' lives are going to be saved a year. This is incredible news.
Plants' lives matter.
Forests.
Plants' lives matter. Solidarity, comrade.
Solidarity. Pay some money in here and I'll buy a massive mansion.
But what are vegans going to eat now? Because I thought the whole point is that they don't want to cause any harm. So that means they're just going to starve to death. So hopefully we'll see the amount of vegans just die out entirely.
Well, apparently they say that vegans don't live longer. It just feels like they do. Anyway, listen. That went really well. There's a hole in the sun. The sun monster is angry. And finally, hash browns are off the menu. That's coming up shortly. OK. Right. Oh. We go. Right, there's a picture of the sun coming up. Look, the hole in the sun. Sun monster. This is going to send us 1.6 million mile an hour solar winds to break down our entire technological and communication system by today, apparently, but it seems to have worked. What are your thoughts?
Well, any minute now, the lights could go down, and that's it, we're done for.
Or the aircon could turn on.
But this thing is like 20 times the size of the Earth. I think it's one of those things. It's probably not going to ruin everything tonight, but I do think we do rely a lot on electricity. We do need to have some sort of safeguarding. One day, something like this will hit us, and we're going to be done for if we've got no electricity for 3 months.
How can we safeguard against the sun monster?
I don't know, but they used to... So there was the Carrington event that hit in the 1800s, right? And that did do some damage, but we have nowhere near the technology now. So we probably need some sort of backup system in case the power... Well, I'm not a politician, but spend some money and figure out how we would keep the world going.
Taxpayer money on this stuff, please, for goodness sake.
What are you going to do if the electricity goes off for 3 months?
Spend your private money, don't spend taxpayer money. I think this is really interesting, though, a solar storm. I mean, I used to be such a physics nerd when I was in high school. I think this is the kind of thing that you've got to see these physics nerds really excited about. I mean, it's not actually a hole, is it? It's the darkness that's causing this sort of image of the hole on the sun, which I think it's pretty cool. I mean, I don't know much about the sort of physics storms, but...
it's called a coronal hole.
Coronal hole.
1.8 million mile an hour solar wind towards our planet, which will hit us today. But alas, it didn't do it in time to ruin our vegetables.
No, the vegetable is okay. He's sad.
Are we worried about the sun monster? Do you think do you think that this sort of endless doomsday cultism is justified?
I do think that we tend to get a bit hysterical with a lot of these things. I mean, there's always like the meteor crash, and there's sort of all of these different conversations about what's going to happen. That's how you feel about it, isn't it, Laurence?
I just wanted to see how he felt about it. He's worried about climate change.
He's worried about climate change.
Yeah.
He's sad. Net zero. He's pro net zero.
What about you, old bean? Are we overdoing the climate crisis?
How's that tomato? I think we are. I think we are. What does the tomato think about the climate crisis?
He's up for it.
He's up for it. What do you
Climate
think?
crisis? Yes or no?
I think we all want a better planet, but there are some disagreements about the ways we should be going about it.
What would you do? You're in charge of the planet now.
What would I do? I think the technology is going to help us. I think the technology will get us out of a lot of this. But we do want clean air to breathe and nice
what do you think
water
about Sadiq Khan and all of his...
Oh, Liz,
I mean,
absolutely
I'm with you guys on this.
policy.
I am not a Sadiq Khan fan.
No, he's absolutely awful. I mean, he's you can't even say that he's for the working class. I mean, ULIZ will literally only hurt those that are vulnerable, disabled people that can't travel to their hospital appointments because they travel by car. Predominantly, again, the working class have cars that aren't exempt by ULIZ. So, again, I mean, it is literally just virtue signalling, and probably him spending too much money, being a bit stupid with our taxpayer cash in the London Mayor's office, and so he wants to find a way to raise more money.
Would he be more sensitive if he was bisexual?
Of course he would. No.
Would he be?
But he's also Muslim, so he's got different minorities.
Do we need a bisexual London Mayor?
Well, since you're not doing it now, actually, maybe it should be
because you lost,
me.
Laurence. Do you remember that? Do you remember when you lost?
Do
you remember when you lost the London Mayor election? Do you remember that?
Unfair. Well, to be fair, they did actually say exactly the same thing. When I went up to the people and I went, I'm going to be London Mayor, and they went, you'll get 2%. I went, no, I won't. I'll get more. And I got 1.9%. Thank you for the advice, which I didn't take. So the sun monster is going to sort of not kill us by being dark. Vegetables, I'm not bought on this.
The vegetables cry?
No, they're fine.
Well, if we can get a sensor so we can actually grow some good vegetables in this country, I think I'd be pretty happy about it.
Do you like, just while we're still on the topic of food, the hash browns?
The hash browns.
This is crucial.
I actually am quite woke lefty liberal on English breakfast. I know, I'm sorry. I actually think, you know what, if you want to include a kebab in your English breakfast, go ahead. You have the freedom to do so.
It's a great thing to have for breakfast.
It is, and include it in your English breakfast. I think, you know what, add whatever you want. If you want a hash brown, have a hash brown. If you want a kebab,
do you feel they're being unfairly discriminated against?
What, English breakfast? So unfairly
hash browns, coconuts,
hash browns.
all of these things.
Well, hash browns I'm not particularly fond of. I think they're a bit gross. Except for the McDonald's ones, though. They're pretty good. But no, I think, you know what, if you want to have a hash brown, have a hash brown. It's an English breakfast. What I find quite sad is that there are these people that are English breakfast campaigners. Go get a real job. Just go get a real job.
How dare you be so bigoted and discriminatory? Lewis, can you put some sensible... Iceland are releasing very soon a hash brown crown.
Right.
Will you be buying it?
if it's good. I love a hash brown. I don't really think it's a full English unless it has a hash brown on. I actually asked for the mushrooms to be taken off so that I can have some extra... Oh, have some extra hash browns. I'll have one of those.
Do you think they're being unfairly discriminated against as part of in the English breakfast community?
I don't know. I think people are taking it too seriously. Just have what you want on your English breakfast.
Why shouldn't we take hash browns seriously?
I do. Hash browns do matter.
But I think
But be in charge of your own breakfast.
Terrible. This is discrimination.
Everyday hash brownism, and we sit there and watch it happen. Right, thank you very much to my wonderful panel for getting us through what might have been one of the most painful segments in history. Coming up, I speak to undisputed expert in the US about the latest on Trump indictment and the horrendous shooting back in 3.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello. History is once again being made in the United States with the first indictment of a former president. The charges themselves remain sealed, so we don't know exactly what they are, but they relate to payments made to an adult film star during the 2016 presidential election campaign. Joining me to discuss this case, if it will stand up in a proper court, and to unpick the details is legend of military history and political commentator Victor Davis Hanson. Victor, good evening. This is the sort of behaviour one would expect from a tin pot dictatorship or a South American country. What are the repercussions of today's indictment on free democracy in America?
Well, I think what we're going to do now is
See, this was a city prosecutor, not even an estate. So it'll be open season now for any emeritus president. So when Joe Biden leaves office, a prosecutor in Sacramento, California, or Biloxi, Mississippi, or Billings, Montana may file a writ and say, you know what, you broke the law here, there, on your dealings with Ukraine or China or Russia, or you used a bank wire transfer in our state, whatever slight relevance it would be to jurisdictional authority, you're going to have an open season on the out party. So this is exactly what the founders in the Federalist Papers warned against. But again, this isn't new. Donald Trump was the first president to be impeached in his first term since Andrew Johnson. And he was the first person to be impeached twice. He was the first person to have his home raided by the FBI when he left office. He was the first person to be tried in the Senate in an impeachment trial when he was a private citizen. So it's just a long pattern that the Democrats despise him, and no one knows in the country what their strategy is. It's either one of two things. They detest him so much that they feel that they have to destroy him, or they feel that they can weaken him and he will still get the nomination. The trial will be held up for a year or two, and then he will run against Joe Biden or the Democratic candidate as a weakened candidate in the general election, and then maybe a stronger candidate like DeSantis will not get the nomination, but Trump will get it, but will be mortally wounded during the general election.
What's your assessment of the Biden regime? The Democrats have gone after Trump since the day he got into office, and it seems to me that this is the most corrupt regime in American history. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's no overstatement. I mean, if you look at the Hunter Biden laptop or some of the associates that are on that laptop, what they have said about Joe Biden, when you look at the weaponization of what the FBI did going after in the Mar-a-Lago raid, going after parents at school board meetings, working with Twitter to suppress information, when you look at the way that the FBI seeded the Steele dossier, and there's a lot of these people like Christopher Wray are still there. They do these performance art raids, these virtue signaling raids against, you know, James O'Keefe at Operation Veritas, or Peter Navarro, a former Trump aide. So everything is weaponized now in the United States. The CIA, the FBI, the DOJ, the IRS. The IRS just went after Matt Taibbi at his home when he was testifying about abuses of the Biden administration's FBI. So it's a new idea. I think the rationale is that they feel as progressives or woke progressives that their ends are so noble and they're on the right side of what they call the right angle of history, that any means necessary to achieve them will be okay. So there's two laws in America. It's asymmetrical. If you're Donald Trump and you take papers out, you're going to have the FBI right. If you're Joe Biden and you had no authority to declassify them as vice president and they're scattered over several residences, there's no problem. And that's just the way it is.
What would you say, Victor, to those that say, you mentioned the word woke there, that this is all bluster, that woke is just people trying to be kind and people trying to look after other people and trying to and awaken themselves to racial inequality and gender inequality in the world? What is your criticism of woke, and what is woke?
Well, woke is a desire to, in theory, make everybody equal on the backside and the quality of result. And that used to be kind of a Marxist idea in the economic terms, but it's been transmogrified into sexual orientation and race, which they feel are permanent identifications. And therefore, because we're so fluid and upwardly mobile in this country, you can have a permanent class of victims with permanent grievances against their supposed or purported oppressors and victimizers. It's not a fuzzy, kind little movement. I mean, if you look at the transgendered movement, right now, we've had 6 mass murders in history where the shooter had a manifesto. This is the first one we've ever had where the authorities will not release the shooter in Nashville's manifesto, because there's apprehensions that it is an unapologetic explanation of why this person killed 3 9-year-old children, for example, and 3 adults. We had a day of vengeance, and it was just now canceled, but they were not going to cancel on April 1st. We had a takeover of the Nashville gun people who wanted gun control in the Nashville legislature. We had some transgendered people break into the Texas legislature. We've had mobs swarming the Supreme Court justices' homes. We had an assassin turn up who was stopped from killing or trying to kill Judge Kavanaugh only because his sister talked him out of it through text. Where I work at Stanford, we had the law school mob shout down a federal justice and drive him off from his lecture, and then an administrator hijacked the podium and lectured the victim, the invited federal judge, that he was too divisive to expect that he should enjoy First Amendment rights at Stanford Law School. So it's an accelerating movement that doesn't have 51% support, and that's the context of these trials, because they feel there's going to be a reckoning. Should have been one in the 2022 midterms, but they dodged the bullet. But all the polls show that Joe Biden is very unpopular. None of his policies poll 50% on energy, on crime, on wokeness, on the border, on foreign policy. And there's going to be a historic reckoning, they fear, in 2024. So they look to these other issues, and but they don't ever talk about, this is why we need an open border. This is why we must cut back gas and oil. This is why the FBI has to do what it's doing. This is why identity politics and wokeness is good. This is why we got out of Afghanistan the way we did. This is why we're doing what we're doing. They never defend any of these policies because they know they're unpopular, because they're ideologues, and I guess they would rather be right and unpopular than wrong in their ideological view of things and popular. So they know they're unpopular.
A means to an end, if you will.
Yes.
You wrote the book A Case for Trump, where you described Donald Trump as a tragic hero in many ways. And I'm interested to know that, you know, I don't hear a great amount of criticism for the way that he's behaved with his financial dealings in regards to Stormy Daniels. Steelman me where he could have really done better, because this is meat for the Democrats.
Yeah, well, the problem, Donald Trump has no margin of error. So, and he should know that the people despise him on the left to such a degree that any transaction, and rather than be very, very careful, he operates in a way that most politicians. So he had this liaison of some sort. He denies it. She signed a disclaimer that it didn't happen, but she was paid to sign it. And it was probably an attempt to shield his family from an embarrassment during the campaign. And he paid out of his own funds, so it didn't come out of the campaign. But nevertheless, it's what a lot of politicians do. I mean, when Monica Lewinsky was involved with Bill Clinton, they tried to get her a job at Revlon to buy her. This is what the sordid side of politics. But when it applies to Donald Trump, he should know better. That he's been the most audited, autopsy, censored, examined politician in American history. And in terms of actually what he's done wrong, morally, ethically, while he's in office, he hasn't done anything in comparison to the Biden consortium or Barack Obama got caught on a hot mic basically telling a messaging to Putin that he was willing to give up American missile defense, which he did do in Eastern Europe, if Putin would give him space during his re-election, which he did do. And then he invaded right after Obama was re-elected. He invaded the Donbass and Crimea. So, but that's not a defense of Trump. It's just that he needed a much greater awareness of the degree of animosity and the degree to which people would warp and manipulate and undermine institutions to go after him.
So, Victor, this evening I started the programme talking about what feels to me like a clown world, as you've just described, the total disparity between the way Democratic behaviour and Republican behaviour is, and this my personal fear of gender ideology for my own children and wokedom. Your advice, please, as to how to challenge this very pernicious ideological movement.
I think everybody, according to their station, has to realize that we're in an existential moment. These people are not democratic people anymore. It's not the Democratic Party of JFK or Jimmy Carter or Bill Clinton even. These are hardcore Jacobin revolutionaries, and each person has to say from now on, no. And you're going to have to either retake the institutions that they have hijacked, Hollywood, professional sports, corporate boardroom, media, Silicon Valley, the university, or you're going to have to create alternate ones. Either way. But they are going to try to use the power that in this long march through our institutions to destroy people. They've destroyed women's sports here in the United States. They've destroyed the law schools. They've destroyed the big city prosecutors. And they don't care. And they're going to go after people until people say...
We're very, very sadly out of time. Thank you so much. And we do need to reclaim our institutions. And we need to take back society for everybody. Thank you so much for joining me at home, in the studio and in your hearts. Coming up next is the lengthy Mark Dolan. Mark, what do you got for us?
Getting longer by the day. Listen, Laurence, a brilliant show. Have you had trouble getting hold of a dental appointment? 11 million people currently waiting. We'll deal with that scandal in my take at 10. Plus a lot more, including your emails and video calls. In my big opinion, great news for Brexit Britain. Also, is it game over for Donald Trump? Lots to get through. Don't go anywhere. Mark Dolan tonight.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's